Welcome to Dog Day afternoon. It's Friday, June 10th. Another great day to make some bets. I'm Gilles and Dan with FTN Bets on a show powered by the FTN Network. I'm joined as always by Daquan Young. Quan, it's Game 4 NBA Finals tonight. Celtics took care of business in Game 3, but again, another awful third quarter from the Celtics. They almost blew it. They actually gave up the lead that they had. But to me, Quan, the biggest storyline to come out of Game 3 was actually the fans in Boston. Apparently, Draymond Green did not take too kindly to fans yelling "F you, Draymond," which, again, very endearing chants in front of 5 to 6, 7-year-olds. And that just made me think of like some of the insults that I've heard from either just opponents or fans when I've been playing, like when I played like high school basketball and played in college. Just quickly, but I wanted to know, what are some of the worst insults like you potentially have heard on the field from fans? Now, just before we get into it, this is a family-rated show. We'll try to keep it as PG as possible. But what do you got, Quan? Anybody really give you a good chirp?
I don't think I remember one specifically, because I'm always like focused, and if I hear something, I'll laugh in the moment, but it never really threw me off. We were playing Missouri-Rolla one game, and one of my teammates, he dyed his hair blonde, like black dude, real dark, and he stood out like a sore thumb. So they called him Wesley and Demolition Man, and I'm sure
Simon Phoenix.
They got a Simon Phoenix reference, and I'm sure I think they went down the line and kind of cooked us all. So I'm pretty sure it was a Gary Coleman joke or a short joke that I got, but I can't Grand Valley was really hostile. In Arena, I played in Huntington, West Virginia. That was pretty bad, but I don't think there's one that I can remember off the top of my head that was so devastating that I could actually remember it like 10 years later or so.
Well,
all the short jokes always hit.
Yeah, I figured, I don't think you're that short, but at the same time, all I could think to myself is like, I'm sure that they were like throwing out a Carlton joke or something like that every once in a while. Yeah. Well, and if you made a play, then you start doing the Carlton dance and you're like, But so this is an insult that I got where, it was an insult, but at the same time, like I found it hilarious, just like you did. So again, I'm like 8th, 9th man on my high school team. I'm good, but I'm not that good. But like I hit a 3 late in the game, and the guy, the guy who was guarding me, not him, but his teammate, basically just looked at me and goes, "You gonna let this Austin Croshere looking do that to you?" And I, again, if I wasn't playing, I would have just laid on the court laughing. And anybody who doesn't know who Austin Croshere is he was a power forward, power forward center for the Pacers back in the early 2000s for a deep cut, for anybody wanting to know who that is. But and as a result, I don't have my hair was very short. I actually just got a cut yesterday, Quan. What do you think?
I'm going to call you are no longer G-Dog 5000. We're donning you big haircut. I'm calling you big haircut from now on. I
figured you probably want to throw like Sean from Boy Meets World, Ryder Strong.
Boy Meets World.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking straight like Ryder Strong. I'm queuing up my 1995 kind of haircut. I'm bringing it back. I think
bring it back. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And we got an awesome guest today, betting analyst with the Action Network, part of the Heat Check podcast. Dan Titus is going to be joining us here in the second half of the show. We're going to talk all things NBA Finals. He's going to give us some picks for Game 4. He's going to come up here in the second half of the show after I give out a few of my picks. And before we get started with my picks, Quan, as usual, all my picks today are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. If Caesars is available in your state and you haven't signed up yet, now is the perfect time. Use the promo code on the screen, FTNBets15, FTNBets15, and Caesars will give you a $1,500 free bet just for signing up. And you want to have multiple sportsbook accounts. So if you don't have a Caesars Sportsbook account, but you have some others, it's okay. Sign up for another one, because prop betting and line shopping, they go hand in hand. You want to have multiple sports books to be able to go back and forth between different books and making sure you get the best odds. And for myself, at least in my experience, Caesars has been consistently the one that has been giving me the best plus money options. So sign up today with Caesars Sportsbook. All right, Quan, let's start with the Omega pick here. We did this pick on Wednesday's show, and we're we're going back to it, even though it lost, because I feel like we had a lot of good chances for this. We're going back to it. Grant Williams to have 2 or more three-pointers at plus 240. Some of these stats I read off on Wednesday, but I still think it's worth mentioning. So he is averaging 1.7 three-point makes per playoff game. It's actually at 2.2 for his home playoff game so far. From a volume standpoint, from three-point shooting, he took 4 three-point shots in game 3. And one of the more encouraging things, Quan, is he didn't get buried on the bench. He was actually playing crunch time. And so far through 10 home playoff games, he's got 54 three-point attempts compared to just 31 in 11 road games. He's shooting a little bit over 40% from three-point range at home, 40.8%, 38% on the road. So you want to get him for that home cooking. Another thing too, though, Quan, is shot splits. One of the things I always look to is the type of shots that you're taking and how many of them are you taking. So for Grant Williams, 60% of all of his shot attempts come from three-point range, and that's the sweet spot for me for three-point props. It's actually third so far in the NBA Finals, only trailing Steph and Clay, who are around the 65 to 70% mark for total shots that they take from three-point range. Now, Robert Williams, massive game 3. I do think, though, that he's probably going to end up playing less minutes tonight just because there's less rest between games. Between game 2 and game 3, you had that 2.5 day rest. Today, we're only doing the 1.5. Could see just the minutes decrease and maybe even get in foul trouble if the Warriors are trying to think of a way to get him out of the game. And if that's the case, Grant's going to play more, and especially because Daniel Tice, he didn't even get in the game in game 3. Game 1 and game 2, I think he's combined for just under 20 minutes total. So give me the Grant Williams threes tonight. Have 2 or more threes at plus 240.
Now, I think one of the adjustments that the Warriors are probably going to want to make is slowing down Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously Jason Tatum. So do you think that more periphery players will be open to either hitting props or like why would you pick Grant Williams out of, maybe Derek White or anybody else?
Yeah, well, part of it is the odds and just the way that the odds moved. So on Wednesday, when we bet this, it was at plus 320, maybe plus 325. I have to go back and look, but the odds actually shifted. Even though he only hit 1 of 4, it went down to plus 240 from game 3 to game 4. Usually when you don't hit the prop, usually it sticks at the same range or may even increase. So that shows me that they're thinking the same thing that I am, that he's going to get more three-point attempts, especially because he took 4 in game 3. Now, the reason why I would take him over a guy like Derek White, who is playing more minutes, is just more the shot splits. When you look at a guy like Derek White, he may hit the 2 or 3 three-pointers, but it's sitting there at like minus 140. The total shot attempts, it's right around like 35% of all of his shots come from three-point range. So for me, that just to me, I feel like playing with fire. I feel like if you wanted to play with Derek White props, you probably want to take more of a points prop, maybe even a PRA prop. But if you're just taking three-point props, I'm just not seeing the value at minus 140 just because of how many shots he's taking inside the three-point line.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so let's move over to the Warriors now. And this one is probably a little more gut than stats. But when looking at game 3 and really just the series as a whole, this feels like a logical pick. We're going to take Kevon Looney to have 10 or more rebounds tonight at plus 175. So over the last 10 playoff games, Looney has been really, Quan, just a rebounding machine. 9.3 rebounds and 10 or more rebounds in 5 of those 10 games. In the finals, though, the reason why I think Kevon Looney is going to have to play more minutes, the Celtics are just destroying the Warriors on the boards. They're winning the rebounding battle in game 3. The Warriors got out-rebounded 47-31. They allowed 15 offensive rebounds compared to the Dubs only getting 6. And again, it seems like an obvious adjustment, but the Warriors can't. They are the kings of small ball, but I think they're seeing now with the Celtics and the way that their lineups are constructed that they can't play as many small ball minutes and expect to win. And in the series, like Looney's averaging just around 8 rebounds per game, but his rebounding chances, especially through games 1 through 3, is right around 12 per game. He had 12 rebounding chances in game 3, despite only playing 17 minutes. So for me, that's like, okay, he's clearly in the right place at the right time, just needs to play more minutes. So I think we're going to see a little bit higher of a usage for Looney tonight to help correct that, probably around the 25 to 28 minute level. And again, just a shot in the dark. If Draymond gets popping off and he gets ejected, then Looney's going to end up adopting a lot of those minutes. As well, again, what we saw from game 3, if you're just looking at game 3 in a vacuum, like Robert Williams was just dominant. So they need more size up front. And like the Celtics bigs, like Robert Williams, Grant Williams, and Horford, they combined for 9 offensive rebounds. Like that can't happen. And for the Celtics to win, even though they had an amazing third quarter. So I like Kevon Looney to have 10 or more rebounds tonight in game 4.
I think the rotations, I don't know what Kerr's doing because, like you said, they're getting dominated down low, and Looney has been a bright spot over the course of these playoffs. I don't want to say that 10's a stretch, but like who else out there is capable of bringing the ball down off of rebounds? Like, I mean, we're seeing Draymond's fighting for his life down there, and they don't have. I mean, Wiseman would be great in this situation. Wiggins. I mean, yeah, but the small ball ain't really, it, man. Yeah, not at all. The small ball is really killing them. So, I think beefing up. Like I even heard. I think they mentioned Kuminga getting some minutes. So, it's kind of tough to see anybody else. I think this has an opportunity to hit more than anything.
Well, the reason too is, I mean, Kerr pretty much addressed it right in the post-game press conference, just saying that rebounding was a huge factor, and that's something that we got to fix. And also just looking at Looney's rebounding prop, it's sitting at 7.5, and it's juiced to the over. So a lot of people are kind of maybe thinking that that's going to be the answer for them with 8 rebounds, and with it being able to jump up to plus 175 for a couple more rebounds, especially when you look at when he was playing more minutes, like in the 25 to 30 minute range, like against like a team like the Mavericks, for example, he had double doubles in 3 of those 5 games and was just a rebounding force. And I think that with this series, as it keeps going, he's going to need to be counted on even more. I was looking at his double-double prop. That's all the way up to like plus 700. I'm not really trusting him offensively to put up the points, whereas I do think from a rebounding standpoint, same thing with Robert Williams. I would trust Robert Williams from a rebounding perspective more so than getting to the 10 points the way that we were playing it in last game. So Kevon Looney, I think, can easily get 10 rebounds. It's just more, is he going to play? And I think that based on what we saw in game 3, and even really throughout the entire series, because the Celtics have out-rebounded the Warriors the entire series. Now, they got lucky in a sense to be able to win game 2 by not allowing that to really make an impact. But we're in hostile territory now. They need to out-rebound them, or at least meet them halfway. And they're not going to do that with Otto Porter at center. You know what I mean? So with that in mind, we're going to take a side, Quan, with my alpha pick today. And I know you're going to love this one as a lifetime Warriors fan. I'm taking Warriors money line at plus 145. And I talked a lot prior to game 3 about how the Celtics coming off a loss and how they performed. They're now 7-0 straight up coming off a loss in the postseason. But the Warriors, they fit that same description, man. They're 5-0 straight up, 4-1 against the spread off a loss. All of those games were as a favorite, though. But 4 of those wins by double digits. They've only been underdogs twice in the playoffs. That's why you're not seeing very much underdog trends for the Warriors, and they were both against Dallas. Now, the Celtics as well, they haven't won 2 home playoff games in a row since the Nets series. Against the Bucks, against the Heat, they weren't able to get those 2 wins in a row at home. They were able to kind of win one at home, then lose at home again, and then win on the road again. Like, they haven't been they've been really inconsistent so far in the postseason. And then, of course, the Warriors' third quarters. For anybody who's looking for maybe an in-game bet, be taking a look at the Warriors. In game 3, for example, they were minus 1.5 entering for a third quarter spread, and outscored the Celtics by like double digits. And they've now outscored the Celtics 106-63 through 3 games. That's just insane. Like 54% on 12.5 3-point shots in the third quarter so far. And the Celtics in those quarters shooting 32% from the field with way less shot attempts than what the Warriors are putting up. So I think if you're going to bet on the Warriors in this series, this is the game to do it. Give me Warriors money line plus 145.
I think what really killed them is the foul trouble with Steph early on last game.
Even though they out there too, though, man, I was like shocked that they were, I mean, they had to in a way, but like he had 3 fouls halfway through the second quarter, and they were just like, nope. Keep it out there.
And
So,
I know he regretted taking them out like towards the end of the third quarter, because I think once they got it to 89-92, that's when the Celtics went on that run and kind of took off, and the Warriors just couldn't sustain and couldn't catch up. I think that, like I said, I said it on Wednesday, I didn't think that would be the game where the Warriors still won on the road. I think this is more likely because we finally got to see a good Clay game, which is what's been lacking. I think he's going to show up, I think he's found his rhythm in the last game, and hopefully he sustains that. They need a Jordan Poole game where he doesn't like shit the bed at all. And I think you're going to get more than what you got out of Draymond. Draymond's had a terrible series, but, he is like, everybody likes to point to stats, but he does more than just stats. So he does a lot for that team. Yeah. So I think this is the game that they do take on the road. I knew it wouldn't be game 3, but I like this one. I like the road, like you said, the home inconsistency with the Celtics. Find somewhere to bet the Warriors money line tonight. I'm rolling with it. Lifelong Warriors fan here.
Well, I think too, if you think the Warriors are going to win the series, they have to win this game. I don't think that they could beat the Celtics, lose this game, and then beat them 3 of the 4 next games. Like, that's just, to me, that seems insurmountable. So this isn't an indictment on either team. Like, if the Warriors were to win tonight, that doesn't mean that I think that the Warriors are going to win or that the Celtics are going to win the series. I'm more or less just saying that the Warriors, if they lose tonight, have zero shot to come. And I mean, yes, you could bring up 2016 coming back 3-1 on the Thunder. Sure. If you want to bring that up to me, okay. But this isn't the same team. So let's just nip that in the bud. All right, so those are the 3 picks. We're taking Grant Williams to have 2 or more 3-pointers tonight at plus 240. We got Kevon Looney to have 10 or more rebounds at plus 175. And we're ending it off with Warriors money line at plus 145. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring on Action Network's Dan Titus, talk about game 4 and his favorite bets for tonight. Stay tuned. Dog Day Afternoon coming back 1 minute. Welcome back to Dog Day Afternoon. I'm joined now by one of the top up-and-coming NBA betting experts in the space, a man who loves the data like I do. It's Dan Titus of the Action Network. Dan, welcome to the show.
Gilles, it's great to talk to you, man. I know we've been talking about a bunch of different hoops and data and a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes, but it's great to join Dog Day Afternoon. And I just want to shout out Quan, man. I just love what he's doing and his journey and following his journey. Make sure you guys, I know he's probably plugged it numerous times, but it's really great to see what he's doing on a director and Black creator space. Really inspiring to see.
Oh man, the trailer for the movie gets me hyped.
Doesn't it?
Awesome. So anybody who wants to check that out, go to @QuantityMedia on Twitter and check out the trailer for his movie. It's pretty sick. Now, Dan, let's talk NBA Finals.
Yes,
Celtics, they get it done in Game 3. They're up 2-1 in the series now. But the series prices for the Warriors have been kind of tracking as the games have gone on. So to recap for anybody who hasn't been tracking, it's minus 160 were the Warriors to open the series as betting favorites for the NBA Finals. After losing Game 1, they dropped to plus 130. And then winning Game 2, back to minus 115. It's kind of a coin flip between both games. And now they're all the way up to plus 190 after losing Game 3. Celtics coming back at minus 230. From your standpoint, Dan, do you agree with the pricing of the Celtics and Warriors right now for a series price at minus 230 to plus 190? Is it reflecting what you're seeing in the finals, or are the Warriors maybe mispriced at plus 190?
I think it actually is priced correctly. I mean, if you're looking at who is the better team, I think it's the Boston Celtics right now, and they have the lead right now with this opportunity to go up 3-1. I think it is properly priced here. So, but if you are on the Warriors, like I am, I actually have this being a long series, Warriors in 7. I'm still holding out hope here. This is the time to bet the Warriors. I think that this is at plus 190. This is the value that you were looking for. I think there's also some value on Steph Curry right now going to 2-1 as the MVP favorite, because if the Warriors are ended up winning this series, it's going to be off the strength of Steph and Curry. But I know we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
I think, it's interesting because that ESPN poll came out where it's like the Celtics had an 84% win probability against the Warriors. And I was like, where is this coming from? And weirdly enough, like, here we are. But I still think that that's a bit too rich. I think that this series is still going to be, there's still a series to be had here. I don't think the Celtics are just going to run away with this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was saying just before you came on air, my final pick for tonight's game was Warriors money line at plus 145, because
great value.
If you're going to bet the Warriors, tonight is the night, because they're just from a series price standpoint and even just money line, because if they don't win tonight, I just don't see them beating them 3 of the next 4 games. Like that's just tough to do, especially with 2 of those being on the road. So yeah, that's tough, man. So, and of course, like the Warriors third quarters, man, they've just been, for me, the biggest takeaway, like Warriors have just been insane so far. Like coming out of halftime, they've outscored the Celtics 106-63 through 3 games, shooting 54% from 3. Celtics only shooting 32% from the field. But that's been my biggest takeaway from this series so far, is just how incredible the Warriors have looked in the third quarter. But from your POV, what's been the biggest takeaway for you so far, man?
I would agree. I think that from a betting perspective, Warriors third quarter has been the most profitable, angle we could probably have here. And, I thought it was only just a home trend, but, they put that to rest in game 3 as well. So I'll definitely I want to sprinkle something on. I saw there's some plus money action on the third quarter for the Warriors. So I might have to jump on that. But I'd say the biggest takeaway for me is just the chess match that's going on here. And I was watching Draymond Green's podcast, and he was saying, like, we know what each team knows who they are, right? There's only so many adjustments that can be made, but the biggest difference that I saw is that Steve Kerr and just his inability, I guess, to get a consistent rotation to combat the size and the physicality of the Celtics, because they were just bullied in game 3. I mean, out rebounded. You were talking about it before I hopped on the show, but out rebounded by a pretty sizable margin. They let up 15 offensive rebounds. That led to 22 second chance points, 17 turnovers, horrible defense. I think it was just a mix. It was a mix of a lot of things going wrong for the Warriors, and they were fortunate to kind of hang around all game. But I think everyone just watching the game, you got a sense that I don't know if they're going to be able to pull this one out. And ultimately, the fourth quarter has also been a pain point for the Warriors. They've been getting dismantled in the fourth quarter here. I believe Boston's a plus 40 in the fourth quarter. Warriors shooting only 39% compared to 52 for the Celtics. So they're going to have to, if they're going to win this game and extend the series, it's going to have to be about effort, rebounding, and defense at the point of attack, like Draymond Green was speaking about in the presser as well as his podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's transition. You touched on it briefly, but let's talk about the finals MVP odds, because I feel like one good game from guys can kind of swing this. Like,
really does.
The biggest example was Al Horford, who was 100-1 before the finals started. He has an amazing game 1, drops to 14-1, then kind of has a mediocre game 2. I'm trying to be nice to Al. It wasn't a good game 2. That drops to 40-1. And then he has a pretty decent game as far as a defensive presence goes, drops back down to 30-1. Jason Tatum sitting as the plus 115 favorite, even though I don't feel like Jason Tatum has had a great series so far. He looked good in game 3, but game 1 and game 2, yes, he did have the 13 assists in game 1 and game 2. But game 2, he did almost have 30 points, but just wasn't very consistent with the way that he was getting his shots. But I kind of feel like, man, if you think the Warriors are going to win this series, Steph Curry at plus 200 is probably the best. That's not like really a hot take, but I just think a comparison to where his odds were when the series started, which was around like plus 130. He was down to almost minus odds after game 2. But he has been the most consistent player through 3 games, bar none. Like, I'm not going to go ahead and say that he has a chance if they lose the series. But when you look at the rest of the list, it's a lot of one good game, one bad game, kind of good, kind of bad. Like even Jaylen Brown, who has been probably the second most consistent player in the series. Didn't really have a great game too. And when Draymond got up on him, it kind of shut the door on his scoring output. So I just wanted to know from your perspective, do you think there's any value looking past, Jason Tatum or Steph Curry, or do you think it's going to be one of these two that ends up winning NBA Finals MVP?
So I said it on a recent podcast, but unfortunately, I think Al Horford is dead. It's been a great ride for those that got it at 100-1 for that drop off and such a great game in game one. But I don't see any value on him. The only other Celtic that I would maybe consider outside of Jaylen Brown is maybe Marcus Smart, but with his turnovers and his erratic play, I don't know that I can trust him. But I think that if you're going to hunt somebody that's other than Steph and Tatum, it's got to be Jaylen Brown at 3-1. I know he did have that mediocre game too, but I mean, just the way that he's just propelled them in game one. I mean, he was really he was the catalyst to that late fourth quarter run there, scoring 10 points in a short amount of time. And, when you saw him just take over in game three, to the tune of 17 points in the first quarter, 22 in the first half. I mean, he was unconscious. And I think that if you see the way that he's been playing on both sides of the ball, there's definitely a compelling case to back him at 3-1 as a hedge to Jason Tatum. Because as you said, Jason Tatum isn't scoring as much as you would expect. I mean, he's averaging 22 points, almost 6 rebounds and 8.3 assists. The one thing I do like about Tatum, though, is that he's just a scoring explosion away from kind of being the runaway favorite here if Boston gets that edge. So I still think that there's value even at Tatum, still being the leader, but plus 115. I mean, that's still pretty good odds that you're not getting at a minus number just yet. But yeah, I think if I'm throwing all my chips on Steph here. I think this is going to be a really interesting game for him with only 1 day rest. But you're right. He's clearly been the best player on the floor on both teams. And I don't think this is a case that he can win if they end up losing. But I think that there's a very good case if the Warriors are going to make it through. It's going to be off Steph.
Yeah, I'm going to just put that argument to bed. Like, that hasn't happened since 1969. I think Jerry West was the last one to do it, if for anybody who remembers that. But for me, when you're looking at series price at plus 190, Steph at plus 200, and then a Warriors money line bet at plus 145.
Interesting.
I would probably, if you're going to do it, maybe double dip on the money line and the Steph MVP odds, more so than the plus 190 for the series price. I feel like the only way that somebody else wins it from a series from a MVP odds, like, he would have to miss games, and I just don't see that happening at a finals point. I will say, if you're just looking for a crazy long shot, again, you would need the craziest thing to happen. He would have to have like a 20-20 game with like 10 blocks. Robert Williams at 500-1 is just like a little you know what? Because again, just game 3 with how many blocks he had, just how impactful he was. Like, he was the talk of game 3, even though Jaylen had a great game and also even Tatum to a lesser extent. But just, again, crazy long shot, not necessarily saying that you need to put, more than $1.
Sprinkle something on it.
Yeah, but I would just say that if he was to have all of a sudden another impactful defensive game where he's shutting it down and the Celtics go up to 3-1. Yeah. Again, not crazy, but you're right. Tatum is probably going to win it just based on the default, just based with the voters. But at the same time, I'm always trying to think about how could we get better value. I'm always looking for that next value. Even like Jaylen Brown, I'm like a little salty because he was plus 1,000 prior to the finals, now down to 3-1. And it's just like, it was staring you right in the face just because of how he looked in previous playoff series and just his capabilities of being able to score the ball. But
how do you feel about Klay Thompson after his 25-point explosion? Is there a glimmer of hope for him that you may want to consider?
I don't think so, man, because again, he's so married to the 3 ball. Like, he cannot drive past anybody. And, you saw everyone made at the beginning of game 3, had a nice little drive and kick and, was getting a little spring in his step, but it's just not enough. You're not going to be able to, from a voting perspective, I don't think that you can attribute his success without bringing up Steph Curry. You just can't. So as a result, Steph by default at plus 200 is the better value.
I'm with you,
in my opinion. But
no, I'm with you there.
So let's look at your picks today. But before we do, though, game 4, Warriors sitting right now at plus 4. Plus 145 on the money line, the over-under at 214. 2 of the 3 games have gone over the closing total. And I know that your picks today focus mainly on player props, but do you have any advice for bettors who are looking at game 4, looking at the cider total? I'll be upfront. Like, I took Warriors money line because of the idea that if you think the Warriors are going to win the series, they have to win this game. But that's kind of been my logic to it. I don't necessarily think that that's like a perfect reason to do it.
Yeah.
Dan, what are you thinking right now when you see a spread in a total like that for game 4?
Yeah, I'll be honest. The line just continued to get tighter and tighter, and this pertains to player props as well. And when it dropped to 3.5, I actually pounced on the Celtics just because I thought that they are the better team.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I'm not totally out on the Warriors potentially losing game 4 and still having a chance to pull it out. It's extremely low probability, but I'm still leaving out that little sprinkle of possibility there. But I the more I've reading about it and watching more of the pressers, reading the media and the beat writers, I think that the Warriors can really get up for this game. So I think that you're getting value at Warriors money line. I don't think I want to even lay the points with it, because in typical fashion, the NBA Finals, if you win the game outright, you most likely covered. So
yeah.
so at this point, I think that there's just value on getting the plus money at the Warriors winning it outright here. But a little interesting note that I learned from a fellow contributor at the Action Network, Austin Wang, since 2012, 2013, in the beginning of the Splash Brothers era, the total of Warriors games that have gone under is 28-10, 73%, almost 74% to the under following a playoff loss. So the one thing I have been looking at is this under, and I was on the under in the last game, and without that first half barrage, I think it was actually looking pretty good. But I think that this is going to be a game where we see both defenses kind of tighten up. We'll see a little bit of regression of that shooting variance. I mean, both teams are shooting over 40% in this series. Both are coming off 37% last game, 46 and 48, I believe, respectively from the field. So with only 1 day's rest, I think that there's definitely some opportunity for some misses, some turnovers, a little bit more sloppy play, as the Warriors are pretty much fighting for their NBA Finals lives here.
And if you're looking at that trend as well, and if that's a trend that speaks to you, maybe even look at an under on a team total for the Celtics. It's sitting right now at 108.5. If the totals are going under, more than likely, they're going to go under that. So just keep that in mind as well, that you might have a little bit better of a shot from a Celtic standpoint to get under, just because you're having a higher total at 108.5 comparatively to the Warriors at 105. Now, rebounding, key part in this series. We talked about it off the top about how Kevon Looney and just maybe need to kind of be a little bit more impactful in the series. I don't think that he could play 17 minutes and for the Celtics or part of the Warriors to win. But the Celtics, we kind of mentioned this, just destroyed the Warriors on the boards in game 3, and they've out-rebounded them in each game. But you've got a Celtic in mind that has been kind of a little bit of a force on this front. So what angle are you taking for your first pick?
Yeah, so my first angle is really kind of correlated to this under, and that's Jaylen Brown over 6.5 rebounds. I grabbed it at -115 at DK. And, I really think that the switching defense of the Celtics has really provided more variance and opportunity for these wing defenders here. And, Jaylen Brown has been a pretty consistent rebounder for the Celtics all postseason. He's averaging 6.9 in the playoffs, but particularly at home, he's been pretty successful. 6 out of 10 home games, he's gone the over at 6.5. And I think he's locked in on both sides of the ball here. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's increased his MVP odds by the game here. And I think he's going to continue to be a force, and he's going to have the minutes, right? And I think that we've seen the Celtics rotation go a little bit deeper. We've seen more Peyton Pritchard there. We've seen Grant Williams reemerge here. And I know you're on him for his 3-pointers made. I really like that play because I think his defensive intensity was certainly needed, but I think Jaylen Brown is going to be a shoe bet for at least 35 minutes. And, just his rebounding opportunities here, he's at 12.6 chances at home in the postseason. And he's cleared 6.5 in 4 of 5 games versus the Golden State Warriors with an average of 7.6 rebounds. Just the way that the style of play, and with the opportunity of having more misses available, I think this is going to be a good line for Jaylen Brown here at 6.5.
Absolutely. And if a guy like Kevon Looney is not playing and they're going with Otto Porter at center, there's just way more offensive rebounding opportunities.
Right.
So, and I was actually looking that up while you were talking. I wanted to see what Jaylen's rebounding chances were in game 3, and he was actually at 9. So, you're getting right now at 6.5. I think it's a pretty good value, especially with you saw it in game 2, but especially in game 3, where it almost looked like he was imposing like his will, like a physical style. Like it was like,
Yeah.
you know what? All right, Draymond, you want to come up on me? Let's go. Like, and we're going to bang shoulders. And that's kind of how it looked like, where he was almost trying, like Udoka almost was like, hey, like, I need you to be physical, like, and aggressive.
Took it right to him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. A couple of times right off the dribble. But now as well with this series, like Steph Curry points props are pretty popular in this series. Like, for example, he's went over actually in 2 of 3 games from a points prop standpoint. He actually fell short by 1 point in game 2. His over-under was 29.5. He finishes with 29, of course. I'm the guy who takes under 28.5 in game 3, and he goes off in the third quarter.
Goes nuclear.
Oh, man. And I look like it was one of those genius idiot bets. Like, you look like a genius if you took the under, but then if you take the over, you just get trolled.
Yeah.
And it went over. So, but you're looking at an idea on how to play some Steph props tonight. So what's the pick you got for how Steph Curry is going to play in game 4?
So I could easily be you this time last game. But, you know, I just can't ignore what I was reading, what I saw with my own eyes about Steph Curry here. And I'm going to go under on his points, rebounds, and assists here at -111. The reason I'm going to fade Steph Curry here, and maybe it's bold because, you know, he's the second odds on favorite to win MVP, and he's been unconscious in this finals. But I just can't get over how hobbled and uncomfortable he looked in game 4. And despite Steve Kerr's comments of, oh, if he just went out of the game because the game was out of hand. Well, yeah, I think he was hurting a little bit with only 1 day's rest, and him acknowledging that, you know, he's primarily just been sleeping and getting treatment, hasn't spent much time in the gym. I think that the Boston Celtics are going to test him. They're going to play a lot of action through him, and they're really going to test that ankle out. And one of the things I think has been one of the surprising takeaways, actually, that I should have probably mentioned earlier, was the Boston Celtics. They're okay with playing drop coverage against Steph sometimes.
A little too much.
It makes you a little uncomfortable, right? But at this point, you know, if he's got a hobbled ankle, you got to throw everything at him. Let him beat you off the dribble, because he's been the most prominent driver and penetrator for the Warriors here. And if you can shut that down and get more people in his face, let others actually beat you, I think that's a good strategy for the Celtics here. But he's actually been under 38.5 points, rebounds, and assists in 5 of 8 road games in the postseason, including game 3. And one of the things that was kind of glaring to me was just the action and the movement of these lines. So this line opened up at 39.5. I grabbed it at that overnight. But I'm still comfortable playing at 38.5, mainly because if you look at his rebound prop, that opened up at 5.5. There must have been some action pouncing on Curry unders here, because now it's down to 4.5, and he's only averaging 3.4 assists per game in this series, which is down by nearly 2 assists over the course of every other series in the postseason. So if you look at his rebounds and assists total, it's been steady at 10.5. Yeah. And he's fell victim to the hook in game 1 and game 2 at 10, but he hasn't gone over 10.5 rebounds and assists in any game versus the Celtics this season. So that, coupled with the fact that I think that, you know, they're just gonna be making him work really hard, and it's going to be struggle for him to get 30. This is really a scoring prop to me. If he doesn't get that scoring that he's been used to and that he's been doing and showing throughout this series thus far, this is going to be a really tough line to get here, given that he hasn't been getting as much of a production from that rebounds and assists at only an average of 7.6 versus the Celtics this season. So if Steph goes off, this might lose, but if he can stay in check, I think this is a good under to bet here.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's always a chance that he could go off for 40, and you're just sitting there wondering,
why am I taking Steph unders again?
Yeah. Well, and I said to myself, like, again, kudos to you. I'm never taking Steph unders again. I just won't do it, especially because with how quickly he can rack it up from 3 and just put up like 15 points in a quarter, and you're just like, oh my God, man, like, just miss once, you know. But the comment that he made in the post-game presser was actually pretty glaring to me when he talked about his foot injury. He was talking about how it was very similar to the foot injury that he suffered against the Celtics during the regular season, which he then goes on to miss like the final 6 weeks of the season as a result, but he's just going to be able to play 1 day's rest. So I'm really feeling this prop bet here. And I just worry that it's not to say that he won't play his usual minutes. It's just how effective can he be outside of shooting a 3-pointer? And if they put 2 on the ball, maybe he might get a couple more assists, but I don't see him putting himself in a position to get as many rebounds, for example. So
Exactly.
under 38.5 is kind of what we're hoping here with Steph. But outside of Steph, Andrew Wiggins has probably been the second most consistent Warrior in the series. Drives to the hoop. He's 38% from three-point range, averaging just about 16 points per game, solid secondary scoring. How effective, this is a two-part question, Dan. How effective does Andrew Wiggins need to be tonight for the Warriors to win? And if you're betting a Wiggins prop, what one is your fave to cash tonight?
So I agree with you. I think, but I'll go one step further. I think Andrew Wiggins has been the second most consistent player and best player for the Warriors throughout the postseason, not even just the finals.
Over Steph?
Oh, next to Steph. Steph
okay,
and then
okay.
Wiggins.
Woo!
Yeah.
I was like, oh. I was like, hot take. I'm clipping that.
Yeah. But no, so I think Wiggins has really come into his own here. And I think it's just a factor of the fact, the Celtics know that what Clay is going to do, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get out of him on the perimeter, close out on him, and make sure that he doesn't get the three off. But I think that those rotations have also left a vulnerability that Andrew Wiggins has just been absolutely capitalizing on through several different series. And I think he's really taking on that Harrison Barnes role of the ex Warriors era. And he's playing great. And so there's a couple angles that I think you could play with Andrew Wiggins here. I really like his points and assists because he's been over that in, I believe, 6 out of 8 road games. And so, but I'm going to go a little bit, just to play just a little bit less opportunity. I don't know that he's going to go off scoring wise. So I'm just going to play his rebounds at 5.5. I got it at minus 125. And this is really a play off of, again, going with the correlation of potential under, more shooting, more misses, more turnovers, sloppy play coming off of 1 day rest. Similar to what I was backing for Jaylen Brown, the Warriors defense is pretty similar in switching, and there's more variance for rebound opportunities. But I think it's really going to come down to what Steve Kerr and Draymond and Clay were talking about, defense and effort. And the one thing I do like about Wiggins is that he's actually been one of their more consistent rebounders throughout the postseason. He's third in rebounds on the team, third in rebound chances at 11.8 in the playoffs and 11.7 in this series. But more importantly, he's grabbing almost 2 offensive rebounds per game. That only trails Kevon Looney in this series. And he's gone over 5.5 rebounds in 12 of 16 playoff games where he's seen at least 26 minutes. On the road, he's been even better, clearing 5.5 in 6 of 8 games and with an average of 6.6. So I think there's just a lot of, I'm a trend guy, but there's a lot of trends that are signaling like Wiggins is a very good value here. I'm surprised this isn't juiced to probably like minus 140 at this point, just given how consistent he has been. But in a must-win game, I'm expecting him to hit the glass as much as anyone else. And I think he gets the sneaky value because he gets those offensive rebounds as well, those loose balls and second chance opportunities that could really bode well for the Warriors here in a must-win game.
Yeah, his 3-and-D role is like super important for what the Warriors try to do. And if this correlates to Steph maybe even being limited, I don't want to say hobbled, but I'll just say limited. And then again, the 1
not
day
100%.
rest. Yeah. And I mean, really what player is at this stage, but again, a foot injury in the finals, especially with the way that it looked, it didn't look good. But again, Steph is superhuman in certain ways. But it does correlate to like an under, a lot more missed shots, a lot more tired legs, getting to the fourth quarter. Even we had the comment just up there, like the Warriors 3-point shooting is kind of going down in the fourth quarter in comparison to the way that it's looking in the third quarter. So as a result, just more rebounding opportunities. I think the only concern that I have with rebounding props, even though I'm on Kevon Looney 10 plus, is are they going to go into more of a transition game, or are we looking more at half court offense? And if we're in half court, there's just way less shot opportunities, which then, puts you in a position where every rebound is very important, and especially from a prop standpoint. But Wiggins, I expect him to play at least 40 minutes. Like he's got to, just because of how, I don't want to say impactful he has been defensively, but at the same time, he is making Jason Tatum work for his points. More so than anybody else. Like Jordan Poole is just a turnstile on offense, and Clay to a lesser extent. So they're relying on Wiggins to be pretty much their perimeter defensive stopper, I guess, unless they put Draymond back on Jaylen Brown the way that they did in game 2, which I don't foresee them doing just because they sacrifice so much rebounding when they do that. But so that's game 4 for us. We've each got 3 picks. Before we go, though, I wanted to ask you about the NBA draft. I follow the NBA draft year round, and specifically about the first overall pick. I had Drew Dinsick here on Wednesday, Whale Capper, and we talked about just about the first overall pick market. And on Wednesday's show, Jabari Smith was minus 450 to go first out of Auburn. Chet Holmgren out of Gonzaga was at plus 425. Since then, just in a day and a half, Jabari's odds have dropped to minus 425, and Chet is down to plus 380. And the Magic at the first pick, they're known for taking these long, lengthy, rangy guys, which almost kind of seems like it fits the Chet Holmgren profile. I'm just kind of wondering, do you think at this stage, especially before we get into individual team workouts and combines, all this stuff, that he should be that big of a favorite at minus 425 to go first overall?
I think it kind of fits the profile of what the Orlando Magic have been building. And I know this is, before we get into all the if we get into like contracts and, roster construction and all that stuff, I think Jabari Smith is a bit high at minus 425. That does seem a bit juiced, but I think it's also with Mo Bamba, really a restricted free agent right now. I don't know that they're going to bring him back. They already invested in Wendell Carter. I actually think that he's a good fit there with what they're building in terms of they already got their guards in Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs. I don't know that Jonathan Isaac is going to make a splash anymore. Like, I don't, that was a huge defensive loss for them. Like when he played, he was really good. And I think if you get Jabari Smith, a guy that can stretch the floor as well as play very good defense, I think it solves a need. And I think that they're very guard heavy, so they're covered there. And then you also have Markelle Fultz that is steadily working his way back. But yeah, I gotta say that I agree with Jabari being the number one pick right now. I don't see the case yet for Banchero or for Chet yet. Like I think Chet to OKC just makes so much sense to me. I don't know why.
I know. It's like Poku
maybe I'm just
2.0,
wishing
man.
into existence, but like I just want to see it happen. Him, Poku, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I just think it'd be a really cool, fun team to watch. But I think I'm leaning still towards Jabari here, and obviously that at minus 425, even though it dropped a smidge, I still think that he's definitely still the odds-on favorite before we get into actually draft camp and all the looks and who's going to be visiting what team and so forth. My
only thing with the Magic, because if you look at their year-over-year draft history, they're always kind of like whenever there's a draft, and let's say it's a 4-person draft, they have the 5th pick. If it's a 5-person draft, they have the 6th pick. They're always just kind of on the outside. And now they've got the first pick. Well, Knicks too, but I don't want to beat a dead horse here. But with the Magic, I don't really think they're in a position to draft based on need. I like Wendell Carter.
Take the talent.
I'm not but Mo Bamba, same thing. I like them, but at the same time, if they think Chet's the guy, you got to take him because he is. I don't want to call I feel like the term unicorn gets thrown around too much. There's only one, and it's Kevin Durant. After that, you retire that term. But for me, with Chet and really the Jabari Chet debate kind of reminds me a lot of, I said this on Wednesday, it reminds me a lot of the 2008 draft between Oden and Durant. And back then it was a little bit more of a center-focused league. And really outside of Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic, there's not really a traditional center that you'd really want to build your team around in the NBA. And nobody has really since those two guys have been drafted that is a center that you're okay, this is you can't miss prospect. But back then, Oden had the edge because of his defense and just how he looked in the national title game. But that was when traditional centers still kind of had a role. And even then, Kevin Durant he won National Player of the Year and Freshman of the Year, even though I think they only made the second round of the tournament with Texas. But he also led the nation in scoring. So of course, Kevin Durant was Kevin Durant. We know who he is, you know what I mean? But at the same time, that injury concern was one of the biggest issues about Oden coming into the draft of his one leg is longer than the other, look at the way he runs, slouches in his chair, that kind of stuff, just the body language
he
stuff.
Looked like he was 58.
Yeah, well, I'm still not sure. I don't think anybody's actually seen his birth certificate, but whatever. Yeah, no, he just looks older, so that's the case. He's not that new. But the point is, in this league that we're in now, the rangy forwards needing to have a 3-point shot, even though Chet has been working on his 3-point shot, I'm with you that I think Jabari is the better overall prospect. But as Quan, he put up the comment just a second ago that it seems crazy to bet a guy at minus 450 to go first overall because of the idea that there could be trades. Like, maybe OKC just unloads and decides that, the Magic are threatening to take Chet. They really wanted Chet. They trade up to first. They swap, give him a couple first rounders, and then they get the guy that they want. So for that
OKC
alone,
has the draft capital for the next 10 years to be able to do whatever they want.
They have like 10 picks in every draft for the next 5 years. At this point, you don't even know how they're going to be able to sign anybody at this point. So they're going to have to unload some stuff and try to go after a superstar at some point for something. And it's probably going to have to be through the draft because nobody's probably going to want to sign a trade and go play at OKC. That's just the reality of the NBA now. So, so I'm with you. I still would probably sprinkle on Chet just because of the odds and just of the possibility, but I'm with you that I do think Jabari is the better overall prospect.
I think
but,
you're right.
Dan,
just want to say real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Going back to the big man conversation, as a Sixers fan and going through many of the trust the process phase, it was really tough. It's still tough. The fact that I would like to see if I'm curious to see if more teams take that as a lesson to, like, you don't need to invest in a big man anymore. Like, outside of Nikola Jokic and Joel Embiid, I don't know how you can build your team around centers anymore. It's a wing 3-and-D league. Look at Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. I mean, the list goes on. You need to have the guards and the wings to really get deep into the playoffs here. And also, it's just a reliability factor. I don't want to have to deal with back, foot, leg, all these things that come with these big men, and ultimately like lowering their ceiling. And I think the floor for some of these guys, like, Chet is like really long and rangy, but like he's different. Like, he's so agile.
It's a one-of-a-kind body type in the NBA.
Yeah.
One-of-a-kind. It's like Sean Bradley, but not. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, just a little bit smaller, but like Sean Bradley.
I appreciate that reference.
Well, he didn't get like injured that way, like as he was playing, but he just he couldn't ever put on weight. And back then in the 90s, like, he would just get, you can literally YouTube Sean Bradley getting dunked on compilations, like, you know what I mean? So just because of the lack of size, right? So I'm with you in a sense that from a center standpoint, you can still do it, but just there aren't guys that are like, the one thing about Jokic and Embiid, they still embrace the post game. You don't see that from centers right now. So as a result, you're watching college hoops, and you might see a center kind of do it like the year before, Luka Garza, probably the best post player in college, couldn't even get a sniff in the first round just because a lot of time these big guys. Jokic to a lesser extent, but Embiid, he still had the lateral quickness to be able to stay in front of guys if he had to go out on the perimeter and got switched onto a guard on the pick and roll. A lot of these centers that are coming out now, they might be awesome in the post, but defensively they just get liability. They just can't move the hips quick enough to be able to turn and to keep up with these guys. So you're right in a sense that where the NBA is going, Jabari Smith is the prototypical forward that you want.
Right.
All right. Well, it's in the books, Dan. That's all for today. 3 picks from me, 3 picks from you. Now, before we go, I want you to tell the people who are watching at home more about where we can find your work, what you got coming up, what podcast shows you're doing. Just tell us all about how we can find more content from Dan Titus.
Yes, so you can find me on Heat Check tonight talking about Game 4 on the Action Network YouTube channel, so make sure to check that out. I also contribute to the FTN Network. I work with a couple of great NBA cappers over there, so check that out. And then also going to be doing some more content, hopefully around fantasy football here. I'm going to be going out to the FSGA conference here, so I'm in an expert league, so I'm really excited to get some early drafting for redraft in there. But yeah, you can follow my picks in the Action Network app and follow me on Twitter at Dan Titus. And this has always been, I've been following the journey of FTN, and I love all the guys that you guys have on your network, as well as the capping that you guys do. Just a really great organization. And this is just a pleasure for me to get on the show, man. I love what you do, and building it off the ROI, man. You're a champion for what you do, man. I some of those long shots, I'm like, I can't get there, but hey,
it's even crazier for touchdown season, man. Touchdown season, I feel like
anytime
I have a better
TD,
finger
let's
on the pulse. But basketball, I've just been getting murdered lately. But I've been trying to find the better angles, and that's why I've been following guys like you who are up and coming and just seeing like kind of what your process is been a fan of your work now for at least over a year now. So again, keep up the great work. Look forward to hearing all your content, seeing the shows that you're on and the content that you produce over with Action Network. So keep that up, man. And we'll be back. Dog Day Afternoon will be back on Wednesday on FTN Network. Another special guest, more picks. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at GDawg5000. As he said, make sure to follow him on Twitter at Dan Titus. I want to thank everybody for watching Dog Day Afternoon. Bon chance.